Hello, everybody. Laura Victoria Ward in Inner Outer Space in the movement room of my house, which it's so funny because I usually teach in other rooms, not the movement room, but this is an empty room for movement. So yeah, today I was thinking, I've been really thinking a lot about the developmental patterns, which I taught a few classes on that you guys have been in, some of you. But I've been thinking really more specifically about some of the really first developmental patterns. So first, there's just this idea of breath support, and then we're thinking like a baby is born, and these are the things that start to really come online. So obviously the first thing out of the womb is going to be actually breathing in air. And like, what is that for a baby? Oh, here I am out of this watery environment, and now I am in air. So just that shift from being in this fluid space of the womb into air, and first pattern to come in is breath support and finding a sense of the breathing. So let's play with breath support. And I'm also, my plan, hopefully I stick to it, is to work with some of these developmental patterns in sort of a meditative seated state, and then start to move a little bit more and bring in the earth, wind, and fire. Just kidding. The air, water, fire, and earth, just to get some more just possibilities in our bodies. So first of all, let's start with this idea of breath, how we're going to do core distal as well. So we're going to work with the patterns of breath support, head, tail, and core distal. And actually it goes breath support, core distal, and then head, tail, just so you know what that is. So let's say baby is born. I'm just going to talk about it for a minute, and then we'll kind of work through it. First pattern, first breath of air. Just imagining what's that like? What's that first breath of air coming into your body like? Yeah, and so for me, I'm adding some growing and shrinking with it. Just imagining first breath. And then our next pattern would be this core distal. Like for babies, a lot of it is getting things into their mouth, like finding the breast. So inner to outer, center to periphery. And then also coming quickly and online with that, it's going to be head, tail. So we're going to keep kind of moving through these patterns. And let's just play with breath support first. And let's play with breath support with this idea that we're like a bubble. And as we inhale, the whole bubble's expanding. And as we exhale, the whole bubble sort of coming into itself. So we could also think of it sort of like deep cellular breathing or deep cellular support with the breath in our body, the air, the oxygen coming in, growing and shrinking. And it can be really in any way, like it can be up and down. It can be forward and backward. It can be side to side. It can be into the diagonals. And ideally, it's everything. It's all happening. So we're like filling up, expanding, opening, and then bringing it back in. So breath support is always underlying all support. Breath support is underlying our core support. It's underlying all the connections, or it's not, right? If we're like holding the breath, it can be very disconnecting. We could use breath holds to sort of stimulate certain things in our body. But for right now, we're just thinking of this idea of underlying breath support, even thinking of the skin breathing, right? So skin breathing, and maybe with skin breath, we can add some self-touch. Feeling that surface of our body, right? I just saw a video on Instagram of a pole dancer who's entirely painted in gold and just wearing a little gold thong. Even the soles of her feet are painted gold. And I remember hearing when I was young that if you painted your whole body and your skin couldn't breathe in some place, you would die. So I'm looking at this video and wondering how her whole body's painted, what part of her skin is breathing. And the other thing I'm wondering is, how is she sticking to that pole with all that gold paint all over her body? Anyway, those are my weird thoughts, just to bring them in as we play with this idea of breath support into the skin. And as I'm getting into this, we're going to start to add a little core distal. So center to the periphery. And we could also think like fingers and toes into the center and then back out. So this sort of, I want to say like a starfish pattern where things are radiating out to the edges and then coming back in, maybe coming back in like a starfish is eating through their belly, and so is a jellyfish. So thinking of that pattern of nourishment coming into center, radiating out to the fingers and toes, even maybe the crown of our head and our tail, but finding this core distant pattern. Yeah, and look at Bonnie go, awesome. You could be on the floor rolling around with this. Like I'm seated because it's just easier to talk to you that way, but you could be on the floor. You can play with this, and actually I'm probably gonna get down to the floor with it because I'm seeing you down there and that's just too exciting. So I'm taking mine down as well to find that like toes, fingers, center, and just awakening and enlivening those connections. So we had our breath support, deep breath support, and then this core distal, center to periphery. And I'm going to throw in the third, the head tail, because as I'm going core distal, I become very aware of spinal movement. And as you guys mostly know, I'm a huge maximalist and very sort of speed demon. So feel free to take this slower if you need to. Yeah, so we've got Teresa, let's see, not quite connected yet. Teresa and Walter joining us. We're exploring developmental patterning, Teresa and Walter. We started out with breath support, imagining being a baby coming into the world and taking that first breath, and then subsequent breathing. And then we moved into this core distal, center to the periphery. And also, this could be done in your imagination. You could be sitting on a chair doing it. You could just be letting your brain make the patterns. So let all of this come in whatever way feels good. So I'm going to take it all the way down to the floor and start to find, again, core distal. And imagine like you are a baby. Like just imagine you've just arrived as a human body outside of the womb in your own space. What does that feel like? What's possible? And of course, because we aren't actually babies, we're just imagining it, your movement may be more advanced. That's okay. Feeling center to edge, core distal. And I'm going to mute one of you, or actually mute you all. There we go, just so that we don't have the double feedback. Good. So let's let that go for a second. Let's let the exploration of movement go and just come into stillness for a second and feel where the breath is now. What's happening in, and even what comes up for you when I say breath support. Like, can you relax into the idea of breath support? Or do you go into a story of like maybe self-judgment with breath support? Or can you just feel into your own breathing and let go of the story and just move into sensation of breath? And you could be seated up, seated, standing, laying down, any way that you feel good in your body right now. Letting yourself tune into just breathing. Every cell breathing, deep cellular breathing. And as I say, tune into just breathing, my body's still moving, but I'm kind of just letting it move as it wants to without too much thought or intention. So I said the magic word, and that is intention. And so just for a second, wherever you are, whatever's going on for you, I just want you to set an intention for yourself for the class today. Like for me, what is my intention in teaching? And it is to bring more of this information to the world and to also embody it myself while I'm teaching. Like as I'm in the space of this thought and movement, I'm in the space of the thought and movement, and it feels great. So to me, it's enriching and enlivening my body and other people's bodies. So, and the second layer of that is that when we are more in touch and in tune with our own bodies, it's easier to be more in touch and in tune with our surroundings and people, the planet, the animals, the trees, the cosmos, whatever it is. So to me, that's one big, huge intention. So yours could be very simple. or it could be somewhere along the lines of mine, whatever feels good to you. But I feel like when we start to actually think about intention, then some of that can come into the world as opposed to just mindlessly going along or what are we doing? Oh, but if you have a reason for doing something, then it can start to birth. And since we're coming with that baby breath coming into the world, first breath, or even thinking about going underwater and like you've held your breath for a while and you pop up. What's that like to take in that big breath? So we're moving with these patterns, these first developmental patterns, first pattern, breath support. Core distal and head tail. And so that head tail, I'm going to start to bring it more into head tail. And you can do this again, laying down, standing up, any way you want, but start to become aware of your head to your tail. So it could be movement where you're allowing your spine some fluidity and some freedom. Or you could be like doing, okay, I can do cat-cow, I can do lateral flexion and extension, I can do spiraling. Like that's a very sort of exercisey way to go through it. Or you can go in a more sort of continuum free movement or exploratory way of finding out what is possible in here with the head tail. And as I'm head tailing, I'm also core distaling. Like my arms just want to be part of this. And so for me in these classes, I want to let my body participate as much as possible. So I can come in with my mind and my plan, and I can say the things I'm saying, but then at some point my body might be doing something a little different. So I want to give you permission also to do that. You can do something different. You can do what is feeling good for you, just listening, taking it in whatever way feels right to you. Walter, how are you? Let's come in for a little check-in and see what's happening in the world, because I'm only now seeing Walter and Teresa because I had it on. So feel free to unmute and let's just have a check-in. How is it going? What's happening?
I just got back from riding my bike to the gym and back. And so I spent the time so far since I checked in, just checking in and at least intellectually and something, letting it drift down into my body, what you were talking about. But
great. Excellent.
As you can see, I'm a little sweaty.
I was impressed by the sweatband.
I'm impressed with is that a punching bag, Laura?
It is a punching bag. Don't get too impressed. It's not mine, it's my boyfriend's.
Oh, is that why there's a condom on it?
There's like, thanks for noticing the punching bag condom. That's so that it doesn't impregnate anyone, of course. Why else would it wear a condom?
Thank God I don't want any more kids, so I'm glad I won't get pregnant from your punching bag. I'm bringing my friend a La Bon book today. I have a friend who's she's having some problems, but she's a long time conscious dancer, so I'm bringing her a coffee and a La Bon book. And I want to show off my vest. And then I'm going to camera off and be listening from my car ride.
Oh my God, look at that vest. Did you make that or did somebody make it?
No, someone else made it. I collected
Okay, I'm spotlighting you for a second, just so that you can.
Okay, so it's a
so
whole
that people
look.
can see the back.
The whole look, and then I wear my quilt coat over it.
Oh my God, if you were here, you'd be sweating bullets.
We'll see San Francisco. Move to San Francisco. We're not a part of global warming. It is like 62 degrees here. Okay, I'm wearing boots. I can't even wear sandals. But anyway, that's not La Bon, but I'm bringing my book to your friend and I'm hoping she's going to take your class. So I'm going to camera off and mute now, but I'm going to be listening to give her all the good info.
Cool. Peen, do you have to go or is that a hello? Go.
No, I was saying goodbye to Teresa. But yeah, as I'm here, you said asked us to take an how do you say it?
Intention.
Intention. Yeah, my intention was just to feel where the tension in my body is and not directly want to get rid of it, but just be with it. So that was my intention.
Nice. Anyone else? No pressure. You don't have to say anything. Just allowed. Yeah, Missy.
Wanted to offer up a theme song for Teresa. When you showed the back of your vest, the song House of the Rising Sun came into my head. So there is a house in New Orleans.
Awesome. Okay, shall we continue? Okay, good. All right, so so what I want to do is go back and forth between these different patterns of just bringing your awareness from one pattern to another to another. That doesn't mean that you are stopping any pattern. It's just that your awareness is shifting. So one more thing to think about with awareness is that, and it's so funny. It's like in Laban, we talk about indirect or direct space, like direct space is pinpointed and indirect space is global. But in that Laban version of indirect space and direct space, it's effort, it is attending with, and it's usually, if we see it in somebody's body, there's usually a visual aspect to that attending. Like if I was doing it with just my hands, we wouldn't really talk about that being indirect or direct space, but we can think of it as indirect or direct awareness, that we're pinpointing and focusing, or we're globally expansive. And some people are talking about this as, what is it, spotlight, lantern, taking it all in, spotlight. That's, I think, the sort of more corporate version of that right now. But there's many ways of looking at that. Somebody else says, I think that owl eyes, and then what's the other one? I don't even know. But like, you know, we have different ways of taking our awareness, and then our awareness can be non-visual at all. It just can be sensory based, and we can sensorily focus on one little area or a whole area, and we can have many dances between those types of sensations. So the sort of dances of our awareness, pinging back and forth to different ideas and different concepts in our body, and how those land is sort of where we're going with this. And then I'm going to add music, and we're going to play a little bit more with the actual elements. But let's go, do we want music? Let's not do music yet. Let's come back into whatever position is comfortable for you, because this could also be an all fours thing. You can find center to periphery or breath support. This is great for head tail. So whatever feels comfortable for you. If you're into the all fours factor, go for it. If you want to be seated on your back or standing, all of the above are possibilities. So here I am in breath support with my awareness, while my body is doing a core distal pattern. And as I name that, it shifts. But it is, I mean, patterns are happening in tandem with each other all the time. Like this, ideally in most movement, we want to have a deep breath support happening. So it's an underlying layer of whatever else is going on. So I'm really core distaling, center to periphery. And as I start to get more interested in more movement, I start to add the head tail, and my spine comes online. And thinking of that spinal movement as having real fluidity, so that we are bathing the whole nervous system with that cerebral spinal fluid, but we're just connecting into the watery nature of even our bones. So I'm going to just keep exploring for a few minutes. And ideally, I'm not going to talk, although that's really hard for me. So I may start talking in like 2 minutes, but let's just explore. And for yourself, see what patterns you're noticing. And if you can bring your awareness into the shifting. Yeah, and you can also take in, I know we have not everybody on. Oh, we've got somebody new coming in who has never been here before. So that's interesting. Hello, Robin. Welcome. We're in the middle of a big exploration. It is started with breath support. We're working with developmental patterns, the way that a baby comes into the world. First thing, once they're out of the womb, is breath. Eventually, starting to find some core distal, center to periphery, and head tail. So these are the movement patterns that we're playing with. Feel free to write anything in the chat, how you arrived here and where you might be would be interesting for us. Yeah, so developmental patterns, what happens, what human nervous systems go through to become human in movement. And this work isn't like, they're neurological patterns that you can find in body mind centering, you can find in any kind of developmental system. Laban Bartenia focuses on them as well. So we started with this idea of breath support, and then core distal center periphery. Also in Laban, we call that navel radiation, radiating outward, bringing it back in. Could be in a very asymmetrical pattern. And then head tail, relating head tail. So this could also move if we were going to go to our next place. If we were going to go to the next level, for the people who have been exploring, you may end up with some right versus left, right side versus left side, homolateral patterning. And then, sorry, it would be upper versus lower into right versus left. So with head tail, that sort of introduces the upper versus lower homologous pattern. Right side versus left, homolateral. We're getting pretty advanced here. That would be baby rolling. So when they start to be able to roll, often now, used to be babies were left on their stomachs all the time. Now babies are usually supposed to be on their backs until they can roll themselves over, unless you're there watching them. So if we think of that rolling, that is the right side versus left side. Before that, we'd have head tail push-pull patterning. And that is even this, head lifting up, raising the head. So I think the fact that we now keep babies on their backs longer is going to change a little bit how the patterning works, right? Prior to that, we used to always, I don't know, growing up, babies were often put on their stomachs when I was young, back in the Stone Ages. And then they have a chance to really develop their back extension. So this is just something to think about. Hey, Quentin. So playing with that initial breath support pattern, moving into core distal, navel radiation, things going out and coming back in. Also could be, both of these could be very much about growing and shrinking, expanding out, getting big, and then coming back in. And the shrink could be like all the way in. Whatever feels good, like in your own body. We are adults. We have diverse capacities for movement. So let yourself move in the ways that feel interesting and good. And it could be on the ground, finding the breath support, and really the three-dimensionality of our breath. Which in some ways can naturally move into that center to periphery, that core distal. If we breathe really big in, stretching out to our edges, and then bring it back to ourselves. Finding those distal parts, bringing some awareness into our toes, into our fingers, into the crown of our head, into our tail. The distal edges, the very periphery tips of our bodies. So in a weird way, we could think about that being like our nervous system, the bulb of our brain moving through our spinal cord, going out to the edges of our fingertips and toes. It's like, that's the longest stretch for the nervous system to get out to that awareness, the awareness in the tips of our fingers and the tips of our toes. And think of how sensitive they are, right? How sensitive the tips of your fingers are. How much information is going back and forth with that. Yeah, and once you feel like ready to shift from that core distal again, you get into spinal movement and any kind of free flow spinal movement. Think about babies when they're laying around and like, I don't know, if you've ever seen a baby going to the bathroom in their diaper as a small baby, they do all this kind of like squishing and moving and gut body stuff is going on. So let yourself find some of that, not that you want to go to the bathroom in your diaper, but just letting yourself find some of that gut body rippling, flowing movement. And feeling into what that feels like, what that brings up for you. Is it easy and loose? Is it just movement? Are you going through a story or any kind of like judgment factor? Just let whatever's happening, just tune into what it is. You can also like name it to yourself and then let it go. Especially if it's any of the stuff, the judgmental stuff. All right, I know Peen has to leave. You want to say anything before you go, Peen? Or you?
Thank you very much. I wish you all a very good lesson. Thank you.
You're welcome.
See you next time.
See you.
Bye.
So let's come back in for a second and have another check-in before we, because I think the next thing we're going to do is going to go into the elements and moving. Now that we've really brought the awareness of those patterns online, we'll do it with music and bring in the elements a little bit more. So all of you off-screen people, brave hearts that are on screen. Anyone want to say anything, share anything, something that you noticed, something that was more challenging or less challenging? Bonnie, you need to get yourself a pair of like these earplugs or something that have the microphone so we don't have so many microphone problems. So we can hear what you have to say, because I know it's important. Go ahead. You can.
My baby name is Gerber. I feel, I don't know, I feel vulnerable. And I like it.
Nice. Awesome. And thanks for sharing that.
I'm really grateful for this space and the openness. I don't know, just these simple words, simple thoughts, breath, you know, I mean, how much more basic can we be than breath? And it's always new with you. It's always new.
Great. I'm so glad, Bonnie. It's nice to have you here. Also, yeah, Bonnie has done this work. Great. All right, it's feeding back. We've got the microphone thing. Missy, anything?
I'm always so grateful to have opportunities to roll around on the floor because I feel it helps energetically shake off my brain, if that makes sense. I had access to a lot of my dreams last night. I tend to remember my dreams, but while I was moving, they came back in. So there's an integration taking place on an unconscious level that I'm not conscious of yet, but looking forward to finding out what information gets delivered.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that happens to me too. Sometimes when I'm moving, things come in and suddenly, yeah, things are remembered. Oh, Robin disappeared. It's funny. People are weird. They pop in and pop out. Teresa's in an Uber. Sometimes things are too weird for people, but it's like, can we actually be with ourselves, right? Like that's really what this is. It's like, can you come down and be with the honesty of the cells in your body? Yeah, Teresa is in an Uber, thinking a lot about Phoebe's early movement. She did a lot of floor work and slow flips, breakdancing, freeze. It freezes. It was terrifying. Their heads are huge, and I had to let her break dance. It terrified you. That's funny. All right, so yeah, movement and kids. Like I had a dance that it's called L'Aigle Noir, and it's like, it was an intense point piece, but lots of rolling around the floor. And one of my friends' kid, when they're about 3 or 4, saw the dance and then could run around the room and do a lot of the movement. You know, it's like so much, if we get out of our own way, there's so much possibility. If we don't inhibit, there's a quote that I've been using about George Bernard Shaw says, we don't stop playing because we grow old because we stop playing. But I feel like it's also, we don't stop moving because we like, or whatever, like people move and start to inhibit their movement. Like we're taught to inhibit our movement instead of to inhabit our movement, right? Like we want to be in our movement, not be limiting it. All right, so let's move with music and with the elements a little bit. So I have already screen shared sound, yay! And it's the same music, like a lot of it that we've been using, although maybe I have some new stuff. I have to get to it. Okay. So let's really start with the breath, like moving with our breath. And this can take place on the floor, off the floor, any way that feels good to you, but bringing in that sense of underlying breath support. So we're seated and not moving, or laying down, or in an Uber. How does that feel good? How is that interesting? Let your breath dance with the music. And what does the air, so breath is air, what does the element of air bring up for you? Yeah. Thinking of all the qualities of air, the possibilities of air, wind, breath. Even negative space, right? We think of all this negative space, but that's the air. Feel the air on our skin, the air around us, a shared air. And even this exchange with the plants, right? Oxygen, breath, what is it? Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, one of those things, the one that doesn't poison us, going to the plants and then returning to us as oxygen. So that. This particular music doesn't feel very airy to me. It feels a little more earthy. So playing with the earth in your body, maybe even thinking of the bones, the density of the bones. Even though the bones are filled with fluid, they're still sort of the most densey, earthy, rounded stuff in our body. Feeling the support of gravity. It helps us build our human bodies, our fascia, our bone, even our blood is reliant on the force of gravity to maintain the right density. So feeling the ground, the earth, the earthiness in our bodies, the structure of our bones, the organism, the like way that we're held together and organized through this architecture of bone. And because this is kind of slow, I want to also think about the bone marrow. So it's kind of like earth and water together, this idea of bone marrow, which is part of our immune system. Yeah, feeling the connection to the ground, feeling the connection to the planet, feeling the connection to the earth. And then I'm going to change us to more fire. Finding sort of like a flickering fire, or our fire energy, like our life energy. In the tarot, it would be wands, creativity, chi, all that stuff. Our creative force. Thinking of like our fire, like the blue part of the flame and the yellow part into the sort of white part of the flame.
All those places are here, are over there, in a mirror, in a blink, a corner, a shade, echoes, and themes. I've tasted it all before, and walked away.
So wherever you are, bring your awareness also to the breath support, finding that. Finding the core distal relationship, fingertips, tips of the toes, head-tail connection. Also, yeah, take on other people's movement. I feel like there's a lot of effort life in this music. There's a lot of possibilities, a lot of changes in timing that we can speed up, slow down. A lot of sort of flow between lightness and strength, lightweight, strong weight. Lots of possibilities for direct space and indirect space. And lots of possibilities for really free flow and bound flow, contained flow. So that's like the effort, lob on effort in 5 seconds or less. Playing with those possibilities. I guess I'm gonna let that one go. We're almost there. I'm gonna shift into a different song that's much more watery. So I'm gonna cut this one off. I apologize. Yeah, so finding, since we got into the idea of flow, bringing it into just water. How like an ocean wave comes and goes. And again, it could be breath support, core distal, head tail. You can play with any of these patterns. Finding the flow in your body, the fluidity. We are bodies of water. And as we move, we hydrate tissue. We stimulate the lymph. and we get the blood going, right? We get our hearts pumping. So we're integrating the systems, the fluid systems in our body. Yeah, so I'm starting to really feel the core support going with the breath support. Core support, head, tail, breath support. And core support doesn't mean like locking in your center. It means finding the possibilities so that the center is moving with you, not adding tension, but life, adding life energy, which is, you know, these fluxes and flow of tension, tension coming and going, not tension stuck, but tension in flow, tension softening and then coming back. That's life, right? So finding ways to find that core support in this activation, release, neutral, these three sort of possibilities. Where are our edges? And can we dance with them? That could mean anything. Good, letting that one start to come to an end. Woo! It's one of these long endings. I'm gonna cut it off, which is kind of cruel and unfair in the music world. Anyway, it's hard to fade out on the Zoom shared sound. So let's come in again. In any way that feels comfortable. And let's just bring it in to a little bit of micro movement, keeping those ideas. So you could be seated, you could be laying down, but just, we had a lot of freedom and a lot of out. Let's just bring it back in a little bit into center, into self, into the depth of that first breath, that first like life breath. I don't think I've ever thought of that until today. Like, what is that first breath of really thinking about the pattern of breath support? Why is breath support first? Because as soon as you're born, the first thing you got to do is breathe. Fill up. And our willingness to participate with our breath, in a sense, is also our willingness to participate with life, right? To be present, to be alive, to take in the nourishment and to let it process in our bodies. So giving just a minute or two of slow time, laying down, seated, whatever feels good to you, and just allowing that sense of less movement with breath support, maybe core distal still, and maybe head tail, or maybe not thinking about any of it, and just allowing your body to be a body. Coming in for a landing. Feeling into the sort of resonance of all that movement that we just did. Lots of movement, lots of thinking in movement, lots of feeling. Letting that filter in. Letting it process. Good. And then let's come together for a final share moment. Yeah. And just see where we are now. Ah. Thumbs up. Thumbs up from Bonnie. Anything to say, Quentin, Abby, Teresa? Yeah, Abby.
So at the beginning when we were moving like a baby, my guy and I, we were able to do it like together, and it was something we felt so connected with because he was able to lie on his back and move his appendages. And then when you started bringing in song, like the first one was so dreamy and it was so like fluid. Then the fire was more like initiation, radiating from within and doing like pirouettes, and kind of like when the song changed to like that submarine scope, it was like move, 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 and then pause, and then move, 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 and pause. So there's such heights and depths that I really enjoyed it. And I wanted to share another quote by George Bernard Shaw. It said that if you can't get rid of the family skeleton, then you might as well make it dance. I thought that was kind of cool for what we were going through. Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, that aligns totally with what Misty was saying also, of being able to be with the uncomfortable thing, but not have to make it leave, not have to fix it. Yeah, I feel like the not having to fix things is huge, or not having to correct it, fix it, change it, but let it dance. Nice.
Hey, so I got into the baby thing a little bit more. Maybe peas and carrots or something, but yeah, I really got into the baby thing a little bit more than I think the first time you said it. Also, I've been using the micro movements outside of class, kind of in a mindful way, in a sense. I don't know if they actually come from mindfulness, but I've been using them with emotion. And sometimes when I do the dancing, I use the dancing kind of to help bring out emotion. But when I add the micro movements, I'll do stuff like mix it with laughter yoga when I'm doing some of the dance, the Laban work, and I'll like gradually increase my smile, gradually in small micro movements, increase my emotions. And I do the same thing with negative emotions, and trying to like gradually slow down my anger and my facial responses. And it's really interesting mixing it with the movement. It's kind of fun in a different way. So I've been playing with that. I wanted to share that. Thanks.
Thank you. I love that. I love that that's exactly, I mean, there's not a right and wrong about it, but that is like online. That's it, right? That's what it's all for. I will share for myself with the micro movement. A lot of times it's so, or even with movement, like when I go really into just what is movement and what's going on in my body, in the sort of, a lot of times it's just not emotional. It's just like, oh, I'm just moving. Not if I'm dancing to music, that could be emotional, or if I'm listening to the words or the sound of music. But if I'm just in this movement thing, I'm just going to mute you because you're feeding back a little bit into my headset. It's very not personal. It's just movement, but it allows me to process all of the stuff that's happening on multiple levels that are personal. So it's like just coming into the gentleness of that and using it with mindfulness. That's exactly what I'm doing with it as well, Quentin. And, you know, there's much overlapping between these things, right? Of what finding emptiness, finding nothingness, finding silence in your own body, finding these things which are always there and also never there, right? There's like this, the non-duality of duality. So just to bring that into thought as well. And there's one more thing I wanted to say that you had said earlier, Quentin, about feeling your vulnerability and letting it be uncomfortable or being weird and being like, I'm okay with that. I went hiking yesterday up Overlook Mountain, which is basically like, it's in Woodstock, and it's like a mountain where it's a carriageway. So it's not a hard climb, but it's a hard nonstop up for like 45 minutes to an hour. It takes basically to get up there. And there's no like up and then go along, up and then go along. It's all up. And it really was taxing me, like on my lungs, my cardiovascular, like, Jesus, this is hard. And my friend that I went with, he does it 5 days a week. He's like, Laura, you got to keep pushing the edge. You got to keep pushing the edge. You don't get there and then stop. Keep pushing the edge. I was like, okay. It's such a, you know, not that we always need to be pushing the edge. We can also just be like, okay, we're just going to rest. But if what we're doing is pushing the edge, then don't stop pushing the edge, you know? Anyway. Missy, anything?
Yeah, I have a, what's the word I want to list? I have a minimal presence of fire in my life in general, so I'm constantly trying to bring it on into my lived experience. But the movement, it felt very much, and also because I've been watching Pose lately, it felt very much like voguing. And I had never sort of thought of that culture and that embodied experience as one of fire. So it was beautiful to embody and beautiful to experience.
Yeah, I also feel like that's like passion, right? Ah, and like voguing is very passionate, right? And it's also coming from a place where it's like we're breaking through something with this. And I feel like fire has the capacity to do that too.
Yeah,
like,
there's
okay,
a joyful, it's almost like the Leo energy. There's a joyful drama to it that feels very passionate. Yeah.
yeah, I like that. Bonnie, anything to add in our last couple of minutes? Or are you good? Let's try it out. I see you're up.
Good, thank you. It was just wonderful. Yeah, it's just
Oh, it's not coming through at all. Yeah, your mic isn't working at all.
It's
Maybe write it in the chat.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, your mic. Oh yeah, I'm gonna mute you just because.
Sorry.
It's like, maybe write it in the chat. It's such a bummer. Oh, marvelous movement and breath. Yes, excellent. All right, you guys, I'm gonna let us close out. Super nice to have you, Missy and Bonnie, of course, always. Quentin, Abby, nice to see you all. Yes. Oh, there's some writing happening. All right, thank you.